wasn't one that, was into customs, the way it was in Europe and other places. This wasn't important. So, for example, even, my own grandparents, you asked them when you were born, they said, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know when your birthday is? I don't know. You know why they didn't know? Because no one ever told them. And why didn't anyone ever tell them? Because it wasn't important. So they never made an issue of it. So their parents didn't remember in a way when they were born. I'm not saying everyone, but that was a standard. But we do find by the Lubavitcher Rebbeim that they did keep track of the birthdays, for example, of the Rebbes and their family. But it wasn't a public issue. In other words, because this is my own understanding, because the culture wasn't such that made an issue out of birthdays, etc. So the Rabbeim, although privately between their family they didn't publicize it, because it would be kind of a smack in the face and a deviance from what the Jewish communities were and the Hasidic communities were used to. And I'll just give you an example. I told you this once. When I was 15 or so I needed an aliyah for my birthday, because the Rebbe writes that the Shabbos before your Yom Haledes, you should take an aliyah. I was in Borough Park, so I went to my grandfather's, the shul that he davened in. And the Rav there was a Talmud Chacham. He was a survivor, I think, and he from Hungary or that region. And I went over to him and I said, may I have an aliyah? It was mincha. It was mincha time. Mincha time, no one looks at who's getting the aliyah or not. It's like, insignificant compared to Shabbos. And with a straight face, he looked at me. He said, absolutely not. That's avodah zarah. That's idolatry. And I like turned colors. And I said, what? It's idolatry. And he quoted me a Gemara in avodah zarah. Quoted me. He was a massive Talmud Chacham, and right away he quoted me a Gemara. What do I know? All I know is that he, in a sense, embarrassed me, and I didn't get an aliyah. So so what do we see? That and he was a friend of Chabad's, and he was a friend of the Rebbe. They used to correspond, and he put out a Torah journal, and he would put in monthly comments and teachings of the Rebbe. But nevertheless, there was his standard, of Yiddishkeit and tradition. So this, I'm just showing you how you're talking about now in the 70s, as late as the 70s, I had a personal experience where it was frowned upon to celebrate a birthday. But the Rebbe felt it's important to document these things in Hayom Yom and other such things. So he does document that on Chai Elul, it's the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, which, by the way, was not known until, I think, 1933 or 1936, when the previous Rebbe shared it at a Farbrengen. And before that, Chabad Hasidim did not know that, and no one celebrated Chai Elul. And the Frierdiker Rebbe at that time related what his father told him in 1893. In 1893, the Frierdiker Rebbe was only 13 years old, and his father called his Melamed, Reb Nissen Skabla, and he said to him, would you mind if my son comes a little late to yeshiva, to cheder? You're the Rebbe, But take just an aside, look at that. The Rebbe needs permission from the Melamed to excuse the son. I think there's a lot to be said about that. Think about it, Okay. And so he says, fine. And then the Rebbe Rashab tells the Frierdiker Rebbe the day before, he says, I want you tomorrow to go to the mikveh. In those days, they didn't go every day to the mikveh. I want you to get up early, very early, to go to the mikveh, and then come to my room. Then come to see me. And to dress in Yom Tov clothing. So go to the mikveh, get up early, go to the mikveh, dress in Yom Tov clothing, and come to see me. So the son, the Rebbe, does, of course, what his father asks him. And when he comes in to his room, he says, "Good Yom Tov, today is our Yom Tov." The Rebbe doesn't know what his father's talking about, and then he tells him, today is the day, Chai Elul, when the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe were born on Wednesday. It says in Bereshis, B'yom Revi Nitlu Amoiros, right? The luminaries were hung, right? Referring to the sun, the moon, all that. So today, one second, Hillel, today, the two Ma'iros, the Baal Shem Tov, the great Baal Shem Tov, and the Alter Rebbe were born today. Yes, Hillel.
They're both born on Wednesdays?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that can be checked in a calendar, but I believe so. Anyway, so that was the first time that the Frierdiker Rebbe heard from his father that Chai Elul was a special day. 1893, Chai Elul. The Frierdiker Rebbe, for whatever reason, did not share that till 1933 or 36. You're talking about 40 or so years later. Why? Don't ask me why, but that's the facts. And that's when he shared, and that's when it became known. And you understand that wasn't accepted. It wasn't accepted easily by other Hasidic groups. You know, like just because you say so, we have to accept it. And until today in Borough Park, and I'm sure it's this way in Bet Shemesh, and you know, a lot of people don't accept it. You know, so those that kind of believe that the Frierdiker Rebbe is communicating from the Rashab, and the Rashab from his father back to the Alter Rebbe, you know, and have respect for that, you know, they'll you know, they're fine with it. But the only ones, I don't know the only, but amongst the only ones that celebrate this day as special is Chabad.
Are there alternatives proposed for the Baal Shem Tov?
No, not that I know of. Maybe Isser can ask his Rebbe, but I don't believe so. And that's, you know, and you Hillel could ask your Rebbe too. I mean to say, that would be a question that I, you know, like, okay, you have a better day. They were born. Well, when were they born? What's your tradition? See, Chabad, the Babich Chabad is has a very strong tradition with details, and that's what I'm getting at. So what I'm getting at is that the fact that some don't say Tachnun today, like in the shul that I just came from, the Chabad house, it doesn't say it in Hayom Yom. What happened? Rabbi Zelikson, when he was preparing his notes on Hayom Yom, asked the Rebbe about saying Tachnun today. And the Rebbe answered something very unusual, and you know, for him and for us. And the Rebbe said, "Totally behergish." You understand? It depends on your feeling. I mean, that is such a non-Chabad answer. It's like, if I wake up with a stomachache this morning, I'll decide this way. And if I wake up in a good mood, I'll decide this way. I mean, come on, what's going on? But that's what the Rebbe told him. Totally behergish. Now, how we are to understand this, interpret this, there's no one answer to that. Every rabbi and teacher of Chabad probably has their way of understanding it. But one thing's for sure, that the Rebbe's words, you know, made us think and rethink about the importance of the day. In other words, whether you say Tachnun or you don't, it really is significant that the Rebbe, in other words, I would have expected the Rebbe to say, like, why are you asking ridiculous questions? Or kind of, you know, no. If Tachnun should not be said, I would have heard it from my father-in-law. This is the way, and I would have documented it. I didn't hear it from my father-in-law. He did say that the story that that Rashab said good Yom Tov to him and dress in Shabbos clothes, but it didn't say you don't say Tachnun. He didn't say that. So this was a very, very big revelation, an interesting answer. And since then, until today, including today, Chabad Hasidim act upon their hergish whether to say Tachnun or not. What I'm seeing is in different shuls that I've been at on this day that most of the Chabad rabbis in Chabad houses, I shouldn't say most, many, they don't say Tachnun. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just telling you a fact. I think the more serious Talmidei Chachamim probably avoid saying anything. I imagine like a Rabbi Leibel Shapiro, who's a massive Talmud Chacham in Miami, and on 41st Street over there, and he has a Anshe Lubavitch shul. I would doubt. I'm going to try to find out later. I would doubt that he tells the Chazan to say Tachnun, not say Tachnun, because when the Rebbe says totally behergish, that means it's up to you. And I was thinking about it today. That's another thing I want to say. One thing for sure is from the Rebbe's answer, it points to, you got to take this seriously. This isn't a joke. This isn't just, I decide. Who are you to decide? What did you do today for Chai Elul? What is the halacha? What does it say in halacha? That if you feel a simcha on a certain day, and the simcha is so great, it exempts you from Tachnun. And of course, so it's been taken, to some Galiciana, Polish, Hungarian Hasidim never say Tachnun at what's it called, at Mincha. Some say the reason is what?
Or what do you call it? Like a lot of places who if they do early Mincha on Shabbos, right? Like Friday, sorry. Who does Tachnun?
No. Yoini, Friday, everyone agrees you don't say after midday Tachnun. That's halachically. From Friday is not a raya. On a Wednesday, Thursday, during the week. And so they don't say Tachnun because, for whatever reason, some say it's because they daven late, and some say no, it's because there's a yard site, and whatever. The point is, it's become like accepted. Chabad doesn't do that. By the way, Chernobyl doesn't do that either. In Skver, for example, I davened there for years during the week. They always said Tachnun except the yard side of their Rebbe, the Skver Rebbe on Beis Nissen, and maybe another day or two. So it's not that all Hasidim, but many Hasidim, the Galician ones. Are you guys not seeing me? Because it says here your internet connection is unstable. Is it better now? Yeah.
No, I see you.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Okay, I'll continue talking because I don't know why it's freezing, but we'll continue. Okay, so the point is that the Toli Behegish, like everything else, after years it becomes routine. Like I'm looking around, like how many people learn Hasidus, just a little Hasidus a day in the morning, so that they have some feeling for the Baal Shem Tov. You understand? We've become so like, oh, no one says Tachnun. You don't say Tachnun. So there has to be Isser, you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say that the Minhag Boston, and it's brought down in the Siddur, is to daven late towards Shkia and not to say Tachnun. But they don't even put Tachnun in the Siddur at Mincha.
Okay.
It's not even printed in the...
Okay. That's a new level. Okay. I that's a new one for me. I never knew that they don't even print it there. Whatever, listen, everyone to their minute, but I have to talk the way, it's in halacha and the way I understand it from... Anyway, the bottom line is that Chai Elul is a special day, whether you say Tachnun or you don't say Tachnun, depending on if you feel elated that it's the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe's Yom Haledes. Meaning, what does that mean? That means that you say to yourself, I am so lucky to be a chassid. I am so happy to be a chassid. I am so happy to learn chassidus. Now, if you could say that and feel that, and I don't mean, heart palpitations that we're talking about, midah shebelev, but even up here, you appreciate it. I could hear you, today not saying Tachnun. But if it's just, just another day, then whatever. Okay, but what do I want to talk more about is what did the Baal Shem Tov, HaKadosh, the Holy Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe bring to the Jewish world, to the Yiddish world? What was the world missing? So we learned in the Kuntris, Muhusa Shalteres Chassidus, the essence of Chassidus, that during that time, the Baal Shem Tov, there was the Chmelnytsky pogroms, and Jews were devastated physically. They were purged and killed, the pogroms, and spiritually there was the false messiahs, Shabtai Tzvi and the Peitz Frank, and there was a lot of reason to question and doubt the authenticity of Judaism, of Torah. And the Baal Shem Tov saw a tremendous depression in the community. So he came along and he brought to the community a new way of appreciating Torah, and that is to see the deeper aspect of Torah, which means the neshama, the soul within everyone and everything. And that was not an analysis that the world, the Orthodox world, the Frum world, the Torah world was focusing on. You focus on what the halacha says, what the Gemara says, and you do what you're supposed to. And this initially, when he came up with this idea, was very frightening to the established Jewish community, and they shunned him to the point where the Gaon of Vilna put an excommunication on Hasidim, and which you're aware of. And then there was a reason for it, because the Karliner Hasidim, they wanted to show that intellect is not where it's at, and that a Jew who is simple, who can just barely read the Siddur, is just as holy as the great Talmudist. This was a kind of it was a big departure from the way it was. So they would make somersaults in the street, and they would go into a store that sold candy and cookies and food items, and they say, "Do you have a pound of nails? I need nails to bang on my," they made themselves very silly. They looked very silly and sounded silly. And they did that specifically to be mevatel this concept that intellect is where it's at. So they went, and this became very, very argumentative, and to the point where it came to the Vilna Gaon's ears, and he said it's time to to excommunicate the people who follow this derech. By the way, the Alter Rebbe said that the Chasidei Tov Kuf Lamed is 1770, correct? So those Hasidim from the year Tov Kuf Lamed is Nish Kein Tolk. You take the letters Tov Kuf Lamed and you reverse the letters, you get the word Tolk. Tolk is a Yiddish word which means it's not where it's at. Chasidei Tov Kuf Lamed is Nish Kein Tolk. In other words, this is not the way to get your message across. But the damage was done, and the Gaon issued the excommunication, and of course it caused an uproar. And then the Maggid of Mezrich, with his Talmidim, including the Balatanya, the Alter Rebbe, each of them sought ways of repairing the damage. Okay, and to show the Litvische world, the Misnagdische world at the time, that this is within the pale of Judaism. But when damage is done, it's easy to mess up. It's very hard to correct and fix. You can mess up in a moment, and to correct it can take years. So the cat was out of the bag, the damage was done, and the Gaon issued his excommunication, and now you have to prove that it's not that way. And I say this because the Rebbe, our Rebbe, made a point And I'm thinking about naming a future book, No More Misnagdin. I think it just will be too controversial maybe. But anyway, the Rebbe said many times at the Farbrengen, I heard it myself, today there are no more Misnagdim. He didn't say there's no more Litfaks. He said there's no more Misnagdim. Why? Because Misnagdim is an opponent. Why do you oppose? Because you're concerned. What was the reason I just shared? That this is heresy. It's another cult like the Shabtai Tzvi. No, so the Rebbe says 200 years have passed. The proof is the pudding. Show me, where most Hasidim became heretics. They didn't. They were from Yidden. On the contrary, the biggest Yiddish Shemayims. So the reason for your concern is not founded. And we know a rule, Batul Hasiba, Batul Amasuvav. If the cause is annulled, the result is annulled. So the cause for the fear was because you might become heretics, and the proof is that it didn't happen. So therefore, the Rebbe said the concept of hisnagdut, misnagdut, is over. Okay. So Chai Elul is a day.
I just want to make a comment about that. In recent years, the Talu Rebbe said this very similar thing about learning Tanakh. He said that once upon a time there were Maskilim, they knew Tanakh better than a lot of Prudies. He says, but there's nobody like that today. And they instituted a Tanakh Yomi as a result.
Excellent, thank you. That's very true. Yeah. And the same we find with different things over the years. At Tiferes Yisrael, they stopped learning Tiferes Yisrael. Why? Because he writes on the 6 days of creation. He interprets it that that the dinosaurs are things that smell of evolution, certain parts of evolution which are contrary to Torah, and therefore he became ousted. Right now, many Yidden didn't accept that, but there were communities that stopped learning Tiferes Yisrael because of that. So, but now we see that's not the case, and that there's certain kosher elements of evolution and certain non-kosher elements. And B'Pashtus, what he meant was those kosher elements. But anyway, so when the Alter Rebbe had a choice, he said like this. He said, I know how to learn a little bit. The Alter Rebbe was called a Litvak. He came from Lithuania. He was called a Litvak. And people don't know this. The Alter Rebbe wasn't just called a Litvak. He also didn't appreciate ignoramuses. And he wasn't aware of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings at that time. So they said that he said he wants to go somewhere. So they said to him, look, you can go to Vilna to the Goin and learn by the Goin, or you can go to Mezrich, to the Maggid. So he asked, what's the difference? This is Torah, and the Maggid will teach you how to daven. He says, to learn, I think I know a little bit how to learn. He was going to Alter Rebbe at 16, he wrote Shulchan Aruch. He knew how to learn. So I'll get more Torah from the Goin, but I pray. But tefillah, I don't know how to daven properly. What does it mean to daven? I don't know the words, and I know the interpretation of the words, the translation. So he goes to the Maggid. And he sees they're talking about Kavanas of the Arizal and Shalom, and they spend a lot of time on it. So after a few days, the Alter Rebbe says, this is not for me. I will not give away my learning of Talmud, of Halach and all that, to spend all day, many hours in learning the Kavanas and davening with heart. And okay, so he left, and he reminded himself in the middle of as he was going out that he forgot his scarf. It's cold. By the Maggid. So he went back to get a scarf. When he went back, he overheard the Maggid answering a very complicated shaila in halacha. And he said, the Maggid's a Talmud Chacham too, not only a Hasidic Rebbe. oh, I'm going to stay. And he stayed for 3 years, and he became a chassid. So this story that's recorded in Chabad Messiah tradition points to the importance, especially now, it's 12 days to the Yom Rosh Hashanah, the importance of tefillah, of davening. And davening doesn't just mean saying words. Yes, during the week we're rushed, but Shabbos, Yom Tov, is more time. You can come earlier to shul, you can stay later to really get into your davening. And when you allow yourself to get into it, and you have to block out everything when you daven, you'll feel really, I've used this word, I like the word, a catharsis. You'll feel really relieved of pain, of issues, of stuff, at least during the time of davening. So we need to learn how to daven. And I think that we've been learning 5+ years now. These Maimorim of the previous Rebbe, we have a lot of food for thought how to daven in these Maimorim, especially that Maimor, Nasa no Aliyas Yer Katana, that I mentioned the other day, which we learned, there's the Krish B'Shalamita, and there's Shachris, and there's Mincha, and Ma'ariv, and explains the different ideas spiritually of what all those things are. And you take that and you daven with it, especially, these 12 days, and then the Yom Neiroyim. People, we have this issue that we have to catch up to the Chazan. Who says you have to catch up to the Chazan? Well, you say, Israel said the other day, well, if you don't daven Shemon Esrei with the minyan, you didn't daven. Now, which is better? To daven and not know what you're saying and not feel anything, or to daven slow and davening should have a meaning, and then you daven. And if you want to do both, come an hour before. No problem. If you're so holy and you want to daven with the minyan, which is important, trust me, no problem. Get up earlier, come earlier an hour. But don't give away your davening. Your davening is let's say Moshe is a gabbai and he has to, right? So it's very hard. As a gabbai in shul, you have to be with the people. I understand. So you try to come earlier. And sometimes maybe you daven after. Yeah, it also happens. Now, of course, keeping this man tefillah, I'm not suggesting breaking halacha. But I'm saying is it has to begin with the focal point that the davening is the ikar, because when you daven, especially if you daven with Chabad meditation, but even if not, the tefillah, according to Baal Shem Tov and Chassidus, is an ikar. Okay, so for one chassid, it's a little shaking more. For the Karliner, it's raising their voice more. For the Chabadniks, it's using more the mayach and being mizbain and machshava. Those are the nuances of davening. But the overall thing is the importance of davening. And I think we all know that this is a mainstay in Hasidus. Now, I want to make it clear, because it's important that people don't have the wrong idea, that I've seen many Litvish people daven with great Kavana. I'm not dismissing that, But Hasidim, it's much more than just davening with Kavana and the minyan. It's spending time, extra time of tefillah. It used to be, I heard from in Meir Sharm. 1 second, I heard from was Karlina Chasidim or Breslov Chasidim? I think Breslov Chasidim. That the old Breslov Chasidim, they would spend hours in davening. Now, they used Reb Nachman, Reb Nossim's approach, but they were engaged at length. So this isn't just unique to Chabad. People used to want to see Lubavitcher daven to 3-4 o'clock. They would go into the yeshiva in Kfar Chabad or in Torah Semes in Yerushalayim, and you can come in 3-4 in the 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2-3 in the afternoon, and still see Bacharim davening because they were engaged in this activity. That's true. But I heard clearly. I think it was my mashpia, Moshe Weber. Moshe Weber had I think he had a brother who was not Lubavitch, not Chabad, and either he was Breslov or Karlin, I forget. And I heard from the people over there in Mea Shoram that he was a big Oived Hashem. So this wasn't only, in the world of Chabad. Yes, Moshe.
I was just going to say that we've talked about this before, but I can never stop getting over that. If I'm able to, get into mikvah, and then let's say to learn Chassidus before davening. I'm talking about Zen Shabbos.
Yeah.
And then have a nice davening, and then have a Farbrengen afterwards, like a good, honest, down to earth Farbrengen. There's nothing. The tefillah doesn't compare. Doesn't compare to not learning before davening. It's for me personally, you spoke about being a guy, but it's very challenging, very, very challenging. Okay. But there's and it's funny because the Farbrengen, I feel it's such a key component, and I see it now more and more. People need. It's almost like it's like a combination debriefing and being able to take the energy that's generated from the tefillah in a sense, and somehow to put it in terms of the tefillah, what was obviously the davening and so forth. Hopefully it goes up to Kodesh Baruch Hu, but the Farbrengen, it's like an internalization of what's going on, the energy, in a sense, like we are internalize it.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I wish you that you'll be able to get up 6 o'clock in the morning, or maybe earlier if need be, because I personally find, especially Shabbos, when I get up early and it's quiet, it's like so, it's Gan Eden. I can sit between my table and my couch with different svarim and books, and it's just, I don't know, it's something about the Shabbos morning kedusha that and then it goes away. Once you start going to shul, it's different. But everyone has their moment. Everyone has their place. But definitely to make the tefillah special and not allow anything to disturb you during the tefillah, And that's also today a big avodah for sure during the week when we have cell phones and this or that. But even Shabbos, those that still have children or grandchildren, of course they come over. I said this to my class over here, don't be rude. If someone comes over to say good Shabbos, if you could talk out, say good Shabbos, but and if he wants to talk, say, can I talk to you later? And that's all right, but do acknowledge them like a mensch, and if you can't talk because of it, then just, smile and acknowledge with your head. In other words, make the person feel that you recognize them, and you really do, so that you could go on. What time is it?
3:21.
Okay, so I just wanted to a little bit, there's so much more we could bring about and talk about. It's 12 days, and now every day corresponds to a previous month, beginning from Tishrei. So today, the 18th, we have to think about what did we do last Tishrei, and do tshuva for those things. And so tomorrow it's Cheshvan, and the day after it's Kislev. And this is not that difficult because you have one day to think about 1 month. So maybe we could find one issue per month that we remember, and we need to, make better, correct, and make a resolve. And that's something that is doable if we take some time out. Anyway, tomorrow we'll continue learning. We're learning the Maimah Hayoim Arasoilom. So we'll continue that tomorrow. Everyone have a great day, and good Yom Tov, Omrim Psuras Toivos.
Good Yom Tov to everybody.
Zay Gezon. Bye-bye.